Morning, congregation. So open your Bibles to Genesis 1, and we'll read from there to Genesis 2:3. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness covered the surface of the watery depths, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. There was evening, and there was morning, one day. Then God said, "Let there be an expanse between the waters, separating the water from water." So God made the expanse and separated the water under the expanse from the water above it. And it was so. God called the expanse sky. Evening came, and then morning, the second day. Then God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the gathering of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the earth produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants, and fruit trees on the earth bearing fruit with seed in it, according to their kinds." And it was so. The earth produced vegetation, seed-bearing plants according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. Evening came, and then morning, the third day. Then God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to separate the day from the night. They will serve as signs for seasons and for days and years. They will be lights in the expanse of the sky to provide light on the earth." And it was so. God made two great lights, the greater light to rule over the day, and the lesser light to rule over the night, as well as the stars. God placed them in the expanse of the sky to provide light on the earth, to rule the day of the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. Evening came, and then morning, the fourth day. Then God said, "Let the water swarm with living creatures, and let the birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the sky." So God created the large sea creatures and every living creature that moves and swarms in the water according to their kinds. He also created every winged creature according to its kind. God saw that it was good. God blessed them. "Be fruitful, multiply, fill the waters of the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth." Evening came, and then morning, the fifth day. Then God said, "Let the earth produce living creatures according to their kinds, livestock, creatures that crawl, and the wildlife of the earth according to their kinds." And it was so. So God made the wildlife of the earth according to their kinds, the livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures that crawl on the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. They will rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the livestock, the whole earth, and the creatures that crawl on the earth." So God created man in his own image. He created him in the image of God. He created them male and female. And God blessed them. And God said to them, "Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and every creature that crawls on the earth." God also said, "Look, I have given you every seed-bearing plant on the surface of the entire earth, and every tree whose fruit contains seed. This will be for you, for all the wildlife of the earth, for every bird of the sky, and for every creature that crawls on the earth. Everything having the breath of life in it, I have given every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good indeed. Evening came, and then morning, the sixth day. So the heavens and the earth and everything in them were completed. On the seventh day, God had completed his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work that he had done. God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, for on it he rested from all his work of creation. May the Lord bless this reading to your hearts.
Thanks, mate. Bit creaky. All right, would you pray with me before we jump in? Father God, as we begin our new series today, in the very first verses of the very first book of the Bible, would you please give us huge confidence in your word, and would you please give us huge wonder at your greatness, and would you please give us a huge desire to bring you glory as we live our lives as your image bearers. And we pray it in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. Let's move back from that mic, that speaker a little bit. How good's your memory? Can you remember the very first movie that you ever saw on the big screen? Maybe it was a drive-in, maybe it was the cinema, but can you remember what the very first movie you saw on the big screen was? I remember it clearly. It was 1983. I was 7 years old, and the movie was Return of the Jedi. Right? And I loved it. It was the coolest movie I'd ever seen. That there were monsters, and there were spaceships, and there were heroes, and there were villains. Best of all, there were lightsabers. I loved the movie. It was brilliant. Only problem was, Return of the Jedi is the last in a trilogy, and I'd never seen the first two movies. And so I had no idea why this guy, Han Solo, was frozen in carbonite, and I had no idea why this guy, Luke Skywalker, had a robot hand, and had no idea that Darth Vader, the main bad guy, was Luke Skywalker's father. And that's a spoiler. If you haven't seen it, it's your own fault. You've had 40 years to watch it. But even though I loved the movie, even though it was fantastic, I enjoyed it, I didn't completely understand it because I'd never seen the first two parts of that trilogy. And you know, it was great, but there were these big gaps in the storyline. And it's a bit like this when we try and read the Bible without the book of Genesis. It's still great. And you can still be saved, absolutely. You can still become a Christian, but there will be whopping big gaps in your understanding of the story. So we need this book, we need the book of Genesis. If we're ever really going to understand the whole message of the Bible, if we're ever going to understand the world that we live in, if we ever understand why we're here on earth, we need the book of Genesis. And the word Genesis just means origins, and it's true to its name because Genesis tells us about the origin of our solar system and the origin of life and the origin of humanity and the origin of evil and the origin of languages and the origin of unique cultures and, very importantly, the origin of God's promise to save his people and put things right in the world once more. So without the book of Genesis, we're kind of starting halfway through this vitally important story, and we're going to miss out on a bunch of vitally important stuff. And so I'm really excited that we're diving into Genesis. This term, we're just going to get through the first 8 or 9 chapters, and then we'll have a break and we'll come back and we'll do it in some bites over the next couple of years. But I'm really looking forward to jumping in and seeing where it all started. I reckon the hardest thing about today's passage is that really long, and there's heaps of things in here that we could cover. There's a bunch of stuff I could say, there's a bunch of stuff I'd like to say, but I reckon our kids' church teachers will be grumpy if they're still minding kids in 16 hours' time, so not covering it all. So I'll tell you up front, there's some stuff I'm not going to say today, but my main aim this morning is that we all go home with a really big view of God, really big view of God, because more than anything else, this is a chapter that just shows how great our God is. You probably noticed when Brandon was reading before that the word God, Elohim here in the Hebrew, just came up again and again and again. It's actually there 36 times in 34 verses. So that's a clue that God's kind of the main character in this story. More than anything else, it's about him and about his creative word. And so as a way of structuring things this morning, I want us to look at 7 things 7 big truths about God. Okay? And I would love to tell you they were all carefully planned, so there's 7 to go with the 7 first days of history, but they're not, just coincidence. It's how things panned out. So 7 things about God. They're up there on the screen. And the first thing we've got to understand before jumping in is that our God is a revealing God. And what I mean by that is that if we're ever going to understand anything about the invisible God who made everything, it's got to come from him. And in some ways, he reveals himself through creation. In Psalm 19, we're told that the heavens declare the glory of God and the expanse shows his handiwork. That's one way he reveals himself. He also reveals himself through his word, the Bible. And most significantly, he reveals himself through sending his son to earth in human flesh. And so our God is a God who reveals himself. And so when we open up our Bibles and we read, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, we've got to know the only reason we know this is because God is a revealing God. He chose to reveal this to us. I mean, I wasn't there. Okay? The Apostle Paul wasn't there. Moses wasn't there. Even Randall wasn't there. Sorry, brother. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. There were no eyewitnesses. No one was there. And so the only reason we know what happened in the beginning is because God chose to tell Adam and Eve when he made them. And then down the track, he revealed it to Moses. And Moses wrote it all out for us so that we knew what God did in the beginning. Now, often when we talk about the revealed Word of God, the Bible, theologians talk about 4 things. They talk about the letters NCIS. So God's Word is necessary, it's clear, it's infallible and sufficient. Now, some of those words you go, I know what that means. Others, maybe not, but we'll talk about them. God's Word's necessary. Why? Because if God didn't choose to reveal himself, we wouldn't know anything about him. He's invisible. God's Word is clear. In other words, anyone can pick up, any regular person can pick up a Bible and read it and go, okay, I can get what's being said here. Some bits are tough, yeah, but it's clear. I can become a Christian if I trust in Jesus. I can live a life that's pleasing to God. You can get the big movements of the Bible. It's clear. It's infallible. Okay? It's without error. It's God's Word. If you think about it this way, God himself is perfect, and so his Word naturally has to be perfect, doesn't it? It's without error. God's Word is infallible. And then God's Word is also sufficient. And this is one that's important as well, because there's a lot of things I would like to be in the Bible that aren't there. I've got lots of questions. You've probably got lots of questions, but what God's given us is sufficient so that we know how to be saved and how to have a right relationship, live in our lives pleasing him. So NCIS, necessary, clear, infallible, and sufficient. Now the thing is, when you get to Genesis chapter 1 is all these things. It's all these things. Let me step you through them. Okay? Genesis chapter 1, that's absolutely necessary because, as I said before, God and God alone was there. He was the only person there when this happened. And so he's the only person who can actually give us a commentary on what happened. God alone was there. His word is necessary. Genesis 1 is necessary. Genesis chapter 1 is also clear. And some of you might think, hang on a minute, it can't be that clear because this chapter's caused all this controversy. Some people say evolution disproves it, and other people say the earth took billions of years to form, and other people say that the 6 days of creation is actually 6 time periods, and some people say it's just poetry, not real history. And Rick, how can you say it's clear when there's all this controversy around the chapter? I'll tell you why I reckon it's clear. Because if you handed God's word, the Bible, Genesis chapter 1, to an unbiased 10-year-old and said, you tell me what this is about, they would get it. They would totally get it. And they'd say there's one supernatural God who supernaturally made everything, and the Bible says he did it in 6 days. It's clear what the Bible's trying to say. Whether or not you believe that, that's another question, but God, what he's trying to communicate here is very, very clear. None of the Hebrew markers of poetry here. Instead, it's just written like an historic account. You've got the word and the whole way through. God's trying to communicate through Moses really clearly, saying this really, truly happened. It's also infallible. This is flowing on from clear, but it's not just clear what God's saying. It's actually 100% correct, what God's saying here. And because it's 100% correct, we actually need to realize this has got to be our starting point for understanding. And so instead of interpreting the Bible through the lens of science, like here's the Bible and here's science, we actually need to flip it the other way and go, we're going to interpret science through the lens of the Bible. We need to flip it around. And it's really important because scientific theory is always changing. But guess what? God's infallible. It's not always changing. It never changes. I want to give you an example because this one, I think, it struck me. A couple of years ago, I read an article published with the heading, "All human beings may be descended from two people, and a catastrophic event almost wiped out all species 100,000 years ago." So the article goes on, and two evolutionist scientists, they surveyed the barcodes of 5 billion humans and animals, their genetic barcodes, and they somehow examined them all. And they came to this stunning conclusion from all this genetic information that all humans came from a single pair of adults, and at least 90% of animal species each came from a single pair of adults. And remarkably, they also said that human life and animal life all roughly began at the same time. And these two scientists, they're not Christians, they're both committed evolutionists, they don't believe the Bible, and yet this new research that they'd just published led them to this crazy conclusion that humans all came from a single pair of parents, most of the animal species came from single pairs of parents, and that this life cycle started, they reckon, all about 100,000 years ago. Now, as most of you know, that flies in the face of modern evolutionary theory hugely. And so the lead scientist publishing this thing, he very honestly wrote this. He said, "This conclusion is very surprising, and I fought against it as hard as I could." Isn't that cool? I fought against it as hard as I could. He's still an evolutionist. He's still trying to explain how it could possibly be. But this discovery really rocked the scientific world, and it's really, really surprising to a lot of people. But guess what? Wasn't it surprising to me? Because when I open my infallible Bible and read the first couple of chapters, I discover we all did descend from a single pair of adults. And I discover after Noah's flood, most of the animal kingdom did descend from a single pair of adults. And I discover that the world was repopulated by new animals and new people after the flood. And so this groundbreaking research, that people go, how can this be? You know, it's actually been written here for all these thousands of years all along. And I share that with you because what the Bible says in Genesis 1 and 2 and 3, it actually flies in the face of what our kids are getting taught at school and flies in the face of what so many people believe. And you know, I'm cool with that. I'm not fazed by it because for thousands of years the Bible's been standing its ground and just proving itself to be accurate again and again and again. And archaeologists are continually digging things up and going, hey, this proves this part of the Bible. And scientists are continually finding things that actually confirm the truth of God's word. And you know what? It shouldn't surprise us because every time we pick up our Bibles, we're reading the infallible word of God. It shouldn't surprise us. And so we've got to ask, who am I going to listen to? Am I going to listen to God, who conceived the world in his mind and then created it with his word? Or am I going to listen to the latest generation of scientists and just believe what they're saying when they're probably going to change their mind in 20 years' time? And so I reckon whenever there's an apparent discrepancy, underline apparent, whenever there's an apparent discrepancy between what the Bible says and what the latest scientists might be saying, really doesn't faze me because I'm confident that ultimately the Bible's going to get vindicated. They just need a bigger telescope or a bigger microscope or a better gene database, whatever. Eventually, I reckon they'll figure out the Bible story was right all along. It's God's infallible word. Last one, though. When we read Genesis 1, this is actually sufficient. God's word contains as much as we need, not necessarily as much as we want. I read through chapter 1 and I want to know more. Do you want to know more? I do. I want to know, what's the Spirit of God doing hovering over the waters? Oh, what's that really about? And I want to know how God created light on day 1 before he created the sun on day 4. What's that about? There's all sorts of things in here that I want to know more about, but in his wisdom, God says, you don't need to know that yet, Rick. I'll tell you one day, but you don't need to know it now. God's word in Genesis 1 is sufficient. He wants us to appreciate, most of all, that this huge amount of mind-bending, earth-shaking, galaxy-forming, supernatural stuff took place on those 6 days of creation. That's what he wants me to get. So we haven't got to a passage really yet, have we? And I want to jump from a revealing God to a second thing. Our God's an eternal God. And for those of you who are freaking out going, hang on, we've done 1 out of 7 points and we've been here 50 minutes. The next ones are quicker, much quicker. God's an eternal God. And I love how the Bible just jumps on in the beginning, God. It's just so short, so succinct. There's no explanation about where God came from. There's no other detail. Because long before anything, God just was. And other parts of the Bible talk about God having no beginning and having no ending. He's just eternal. He's just always been there and he always will be there. And if you're anything like me, you hear that and think, my mind doesn't get that. I can't get my head around no beginning and no end. I don't get it. Do you get it? Probably not, but I believe it and I love it and I'm comforted by it because my life's held in the hands of a God who's so big, I can't put him in a little box in my mind and go, I get him. I completely understand. I don't. No beginning, no end. Our God is eternal. Wow. I want to trust in a God like that. A God I can't fully comprehend. Another thing that comes out in these first 4 words is that God is a self-sufficient God. How long do you reckon you'd last without anything? I mean, food, house, clothing, they're important, but how long would you go without any water or without any air or without a planet to stand on? You wouldn't do real well, would you? And yet, God's so incredible. He didn't need anything to enable him to exist. He didn't need anything. Think about it this way. There's only 2 categories in the universe. There is creator and there's creation. Only 2 categories. The creator God and then everything is created. 2 categories in the universe. In Acts 17, 24, 25, Paul says this, the God who made the world and everything in it, he is the Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in shrines made by hands, neither is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives everyone life and breath and all things. See what he's saying? The creator doesn't need the creation. But the creation desperately needs the creator. Okay? God's completely and utterly self-sufficient. And amongst other things, that means I'm actually not the center of the universe and I'm not the star of the story and you're not the star of the story because long before I was born, long before anyone was born, God was there and he was doing just fine without me, without you, without any of us. In the beginning, God is self-sufficient. But as the story continues on, we see this self-sufficient, eternal, revealing God at just the right time created the heavens and the earth. It's another way of saying he created everything from top to bottom, everything. And to start with, we're told in verse 2 that the earth was formless and dark and watery and empty. It was one big uninhabitable ball. But then God sets to work transforming this watery blob into paradise. And we're told he did it all by all by speaking. Verse 3, look at it with me, Bible. Verse 3, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. And verse 6, and God said, let there be an expanse. And verse 9, and God said, let the water under the sky be gathered into one place. And that's the way it goes the whole way through. And God said, and God said, and God said. And that shows us the fourth thing, that God is incredibly powerful. His words have that much power. They can actually bring life. They're words that literally bring life. And God does it all out of nothing. So, some of you are really creative and you can cook things and paint things and build things, and you've got really creative genes. Have you ever created something out of nothing? No. When we create as humans, we create using stuff, don't we? And we use paint and paper and timber and ingredients. We create with stuff. But when God created, he creates in the truest sense of the word. It's ex nihilo. He creates out of nothing. And so not only does he speak the world into existence, he actually speaks it into existence from nothing. There's no raw materials. Wouldn't Stockland love that sort of power? They're down there, they're moving tons and tons of dirt every day. Every day I drive past and they're there with diggers and moving stuff, and it's taking them hundreds and hundreds of workers and hundreds of hours, millions of dollars. And God just speaks and the face of the earth gets changed. It's amazing power. But notice how God does his creative speaking. He doesn't just shout out, let there be everything. He could have, couldn't he? He doesn't do that. Instead, God decides to do it bit by bit over the course of 6 days. Was God like a builder and he's kind of doing the quote up front and I reckon it's going to take me about 6 days. No, God could have done it in the blink of an eye. So why did he choose to do it over 6 days? Well, a big part of the reason is that he wanted to give us this thing called a week. A pattern of working and resting, a pattern of 6 days working, 1 day Sabbathing. There's no reason in the sky, in the stars, in weather patterns for a week. There's a reason for a month. You've got the moon, and there's a reason for a year. There's no reason for a week. Where'd it come from? It came from God. He gave us this pattern, 7 days. That's part of the reason. But perhaps God created in this orderly way as well, just to show us that he is an orderly God. There's nothing haphazard about the way he creates. It's not, boom, all there. Neither is it a little bit here, a little bit there. Oh, maybe I could add this back here, and maybe I should change that. No. It's all thought out. It's all methodical. It's just done beautifully. God is an orderly God. And Christians sometimes ask, is this a literal 6 days or is this a figurative 6 days? Is it really just 6 long periods of time? And my conviction of all the elders at MP and here, this is a literal 6 days. And I say that because again and again, Moses, writer of Genesis, he goes to this trouble, doesn't he, to define what a day is. And there were evening and morning, verse 5. Evening and morning the first day. Then verse 8, there was evening, there was morning the second day. Verse 13, verse 19, verse 23, verse 31. It's really, really repetitive. For some reason, he's going to all this trouble to say, here's what I mean by day. God goes to a lot of trouble to define it. And more than that, if one of God's purposes in creating over 6 days and then resting on the seventh was to give us a week, and yet that was actually, he created over 6 million years or 6 big long bits of time and then rested for a big long, it doesn't really work that well, does it? And then you've got a bunch of other reasons. The word yom, which is day. Then there's the fact that the Bible needs to mean what it says, and then it needs to say what it means if we're going to understand it. Then there's all the mechanics of how did plant life live for millions of years without a sun if it was created all these years? There's all these reasons why I and many others think we should just read this at face value and believe what God's word says. Some of you might hold different opinions. That's okay, but this is what I believe and the other elders do too. But I want us not to miss what the 6 days of creation show us about God. They just show us He's incredibly orderly. Look at how it unfolds. Day 1, God illuminates the world and He creates light. Sun and moon aren't there yet, but I tend to think God Himself functioned as this illuminating light somehow. After all, if you have a read of Revelation 22:5, in heaven, God's the one illuminating everything. He's the light there in heaven. Maybe there's something like that going on there. Day 1, God illuminates the world, creates light. Day 2, God creates the atmosphere around the earth. Day 3, God parts the oceans and creates dry land. And He puts grass and trees and plants on them. And He loads them all full of seed so that they can produce and reproduce, keep on going. Beautiful. Day 4, He creates the sun and the moon and the stars. And it says there, He didn't just put them up there to look pretty. He didn't just put them up there to provide light. It says for days and seasons and years, they're up there to be useful for us. And so just by the end of day 4, you've got this great planet coming together. There's light for illumination. There's oxygen to breathe. Wow. There's dry land to stand on. There's food to be eaten. All these beautiful orbs in the sky to just go, wow, God, you're amazing. By the end of day 4, things are looking really good. What had started as this dark, watery blob that was uninhabitable is suddenly ready to support life. Have you ever bought guinea pigs or fish or birds before? Have you ever gone to a pet shop and bought something? The thing about most pets is you can't just go and have this spur of the moment decision. I'm going to buy a fish today and come home because it's not going to do real well in that plastic bag. And you can't just walk in the door and say, hey, honey, I just bought a horse. You actually need to plan for new life to come into your household, into your world, don't you? Specific creatures need specific places to live and they need things to eat. And that's what God's doing here. He's actually systematically preparing this beautiful world, getting it ready to support animal life and even more significantly human life by just getting everything just right so that when He introduces Adam and Eve and the animal kingdom into this world, they can live, they can thrive. So the world's ready to be inhabited. And so God's orderly, but as we keep reading on, we see God's beautifully artistic. He's not just like some bookkeeper and does everything very orderly and rigidly. No, He's an artist. You can see the colour all the way through, but let me read you a couple of verses, 20 and 21. Then God said, let the water swarm with living creatures and let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the sky. So God created the large sea creatures and every living creature that moves and swarms in the water according to their kinds. And He also created every winged creature according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. So suddenly God's world, it's flooded with life and with colour and beauty. And yeah, there were already mountains and waterfalls and beaches, already beautiful. But suddenly there's life everywhere. There's eastern rosellas and there's budgies and there's eagles and there's emus and suddenly there are humpback whales and there's dolphins and there's sharks and there's clownfish. Then on day 6, God fills the earth with land animals and you've got monkeys and dogs and bears and koalas and lions and wow. On and on it goes. God's this beautiful, incredible artist. So much colour, so much variety, so much beauty. Why did God make giraffes with their crazy long necks? Because He could. And why did He make elephants with their crazy long trunks? Because He could. And toucans with their big beaks and their crazy colours? Because He could. God's an artist and the earth is His canvas. And more accurately, the universe is His canvas. It's beautiful. And I haven't got time to push into it deeply, but did you notice what it says there at the end of verse 21? It says, God created everything according to its kind. Nothing here about God creating bacteria that turned into sea sponges, that turned into jellyfish, that turned into fish, that turned into lizards, that turned into rodents, that turned into monkeys. No. The Bible's really clear that God created unique species, each according to their kind. Mice producing mice, and dogs producing dogs, and horses producing horses. And sure, dogs can crossbreed and you can get different varieties of dogs, absolutely. But a horse can't breed with an eagle and make a weird flying horse thing. No. God's wonderfully artistic, and he made each animal according to its kind. Now, God's an artist. This one's really important too. This passage shows God's a relational God. God's intention all along was to create humans. His intention all along was to share this amazing world with us. But, super importantly, this is not because God was lonely. It's not because he had this human-shaped hole in his heart and he just needed us to make him feel better. No. God had dwelt in perfect relationship by himself, with himself, for all eternity. And how can that be? Well, there's a couple of clues here in our chapter. There's a clue in verse 26. It says this: let us make man in our image according to our likeness. So who's the us? Who's the our? One of the clues is back in verse 2. It says there that the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. So keep that in mind. The Spirit of God, God the Spirit is present at creation. But then if you flick over to John chapter 1 in the New Testament, we're told in the beginning was the Word. It's talking about Jesus, God the Son. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. The Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. And then it says this about God the Son: through him all things were made, and without him nothing was made that was made. And so back in the beginning, you got God the Father, you got God the Son, you got God the Holy Spirit, and all three persons of the Godhead are involved in creation. They're all there. Let us make man in our image according to our likeness. And so God's always existed in this perfect relationship with himself. He's a relational God. But he's also relational in that he created humans specifically to have a relationship with him. And we're going to dig into this a lot more next week. But God didn't just create Adam and Eve just to admire them from a distance. No, he actually created them to have a close relationship with them. Adam and Eve are completely different to the animal kingdom. They're made in God's image. They're made for relationship so that God can fulfill a certain side of the relationship and humanity can serve that other side of the relationship. And the animal kingdom, beautiful, colourful, majestic. But humanity, that's the pinnacle of God's creation. Only humans get made in God's image. It's not just that we're more highly evolved than monkeys, not at all. It's actually that we're fundamentally different to monkeys. We're handcrafted by God in his image so that we can relate to God in a way the animal kingdom just can't. And we'll push in there more next week. But now I just want you to appreciate God is a relational God. And so you look up there, you've got 7 mind-blowing truths about the God who's there. He's a revealing God, an eternal God, a self-sufficient God. He's a powerful God, an orderly God, an artistic God, and a relational God. And, you know, the God of the Bible never, ever changes. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And so God is still all those things. He's still the one and only God, and he's still on his throne, and he's still worthy of all our admiration and obedience. And so I want to ask you this morning in closing, do you know this God? Do you know him? Do you believe in this God? Do you love this God? He's the God of the Bible, and he's the only God who's there. Do you know him? There's only one way to have a right relationship with him. That's through Jesus. We talk about Jesus all the time. Normally our banner's up there, Jesus changes lives. Because it's through him we get into a relationship with this amazing God. If you haven't done that yet, if you haven't trusted Jesus, if you're not right with this God, today's a great day to do that. But for now, I'm going to close in prayer, and I'm going to use some words from Revelation chapter 4, and then we'll pick up in Genesis 2 next week. Would you pray with me? Our Lord and God, you are worthy to receive glory and honor and power because you've created all things, and by your will they exist and were created. Amen.